Good afternoon, Sal. How's day? What is this, day 3 for you in Indianapolis now?
Yeah, it is. It's good. I mean, yesterday, very hectic, but in a good way with Bean and Brady, and like we got them twice, right, at the podium, and then they come back and do the one-on-ones with TV and the scrums with the radio, and we get a lot of there. And I wrote at WGR550.com today about the five takeaways I had from Brandon Bean and Joe Brady. So people want to check that out because, when you're in the moment there and you're listening, you got to go back and re-listen to everything, right? Like,
yeah.
What did they say? And try to figure out some things. So I went back, re-listened, and put that together. Today was a much different kind of hectic. Today there's no Bills stuff, but a lot of prospects are talking, and I didn't necessarily go and listen to all the prospects. That's not really what I'm here for to do in this particular, time period for the Buffalo Bills. But today was me about networking and getting with people and talking with people about Jim Leonhard. I was able to talk with friends in Denver about Jim Leonhard and John Fox coming over. And actually, I mistakenly thought I was on at 4 o'clock with you today. I misread your text.
You could have been,
which
it turned out.
Yeah, I guess so. Which is fine. Actually, turned out well because I was in the media workroom. And I hooked up with Zach, and I said, hey, and he goes, wait, aren't you on at 5? I said, oh, yeah, okay, I'll be on at 5. Well, then I looked over, and our buddy John Ledyard was sitting there. And I said, hey, John, do you have a few minutes? And he's just good. He's just really good.
We had him on last week or the week before, John. Yeah.
Yeah, so he told me, he goes, I was on with Schopp with the Bulldog earlier this week. I said, did they ask you the same questions as I just did? He said, no, we covered a lot of different stuff, so it's great. So anyway, I'll have that when I come back on Friday. I'll be hosting Extra Point Show, and I'll play that because he was really good. And we touched on, really, he knows a lot about, what the Bills might look like on defense with Jim Leonhard and the safety class and the wide receiver class and linebacker class. So that was good. Overall, though, a lot of stuff done today. I tell you, it's long days, though, Bulldog. I show up on the ground floor every day between maybe like 8, 9 o'clock, and I literally it's 5:06. I walked into my hotel room at 4:58. Like that's my day was on the ground floor of the combine all day.
Right. Yeah. That sounds like the days. Any traveling radio job like this. That when we'd go to the Super Bowl, that's what those days were like. You get at the media center early in the day, even though your show doesn't start until 3 o'clock. Our time in Buffalo, whatever. And it's like I got to talk to this person. Maybe I can get this person. Oh, Brian Urlacher is selling deodorant. Okay. Sure, we'll talk to him. just churning out content. I don't think we called it content back then. All right, well, on the piece
and I also just say this?
Sure,
one of the cool things is for me is that I've been coming long enough, and I've been in this business now long enough where it's cool that I get asked to go on to a lot of these places, right? Like people come to me, hey, can you come and talk about the Bills? And because the Bills are relevant too, but that's cool. So I catch up with my guy from Houston, John Harris. They had me on their radio show. But another one was this week I did Kansas City because they're building the stadium. And they're like, hey, we got this PSL stuff coming up. Like, can you tell us what it was like? So, like, a lot of the stuff like that winds up happening, too.
Right. Well, that's where you having been on the Pat McAfee show the number of times you have helps you because people recognize you now.
Sure.
I'm not being cute. Like, that's real. Like, so
I have to tell you.
These radio guys are sitting around, like, with producers or just the hosts themselves. Hey, isn't that's Sal? That's the Buffalo guy, right? Let's go get him on our show.
I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will tell you, Pat's show is actually at Lucas Oil this week, which is right next door to the convention center. Mm-hmm. So Mark Caboli, he is their Pittsburgh Steelers guy, and he's on their show a lot. And Mark and I saw each other, so we took a picture, and I texted it to Pat, and I said, hey, Mark and I are hanging out. Just wanted to say hi. And Pat said, why don't you come to the studio? Come over here. But I was told that, like, it's very tough right now to get into Lucas Oil until the players start arriving. So I texted one of their producers, and I'm like, I don't know if I can. He goes, well, actually, we're booked. And he invited me to come on Friday, but I'm going to be back in Buffalo by Friday.
That's
so
a bummer.
I would have walked over and gone on their show, physically over here, which would have been cool. But that's okay. Just cool that you brought that up because they're here and they actually offered, which would have been cool.
Right. So I wanted to – we're talking with Sal Capaccio. He's in Indianapolis, NFL Scouting Combine going on, player interviews and whatnot. Workouts begin tomorrow. I want to circle back. You mentioned this piece that you posted, looking back. So speaking of circling back, your your second conversation with both Bean and Joe Brady and different things that may have stood out. I know we talked yesterday about their news conferences, but I don't know that we talked to you about the second time around. Anyway, what stood out to you 24 hours later after sort of reviewing the tape?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that there are some looming decisions, right? And we all know that, but Brandon Bean acknowledged that they're going to have to do something with Dawson Knox's contract. Now, whether that is outright moving on from Knox, I don't think they want to do that. I think they'd like to work something out. Is that a pay cut? Well, as Brandon Bean joked, if everybody offered a pay cut to go to the minimum, that'd be great, but you want to show respect to players and people too. So my guess is they're going to Dawson Knox and saying, would you take a pay cut? And Dawson Knox may say, I don't want to do that. And that's his right. They could also try to restructure. Now, I don't know how it would go over with Bills fans. Wouldn't mind if they said, let's add another year to your deal, and then we can spread out some money. I think Dawson Knox can play for a couple more years. He's been a very solid player for this team. But Bean acknowledged that something has to be done there. But he also said, hey, we have time. We think about it a lot of times in terms of, boy, it's coming up fast. They got to do this stuff before March 11th. Like, they'll take all of that time. And Bean's like, yeah, there's no rush. We got a couple weeks here. We got to figure it out. But that's one. And then, we talked about Taron Johnson yesterday a little bit as well. But there are looming decisions on this roster. Knox stands out to me to be one big one coming up here.
Yeah, I think, Knox, we've talked a little bit about this already, but it is good to hear Bean acknowledge the obvious that, that cap hit is around $17 million.
Yes.
Just that, that cannot stand. It's one of those, it's a year in the contract that you don't expect to ever really get to, right? You're going to do something about it before it comes up, unless he outperformed it or something, which is, he'd have to be one of the best tight ends in the league, which he's not that. But he is a nice player and a useful player, and he's at a position, Sal, where I don't think they can afford to say, be tempted by what they could save if they just outright moved on from him because of the state of the position. Kincaid and Bean talked about this too. We got to get him to where he can be healthier and not on as much of a pitch count. I'm paraphrasing now. You can stop me if I'm being too liberal with it. But I, as a fan, as an observer, can't divest myself of Knox because I'm not sure I can count on Kincaid. Like, to what extent can I count on Kincaid? And so I think Knox has to have a role, because otherwise I'm replacing Knox, and that's going to cost me maybe as much money as it's going to cost to restructure Knox. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'm gaining anything. Plus, I've got the familiarity, the relationship he's got with the team and Josh Allen already. They know who he is. They know what he's all about. And sure, is he Travis Kelce? Absolutely not. But he is a dude and I think can count on, and has been he plays all the time. Mostly, right? He's maybe the opposite of Kincaid. So I don't think I need to open up a hole in an offseason where I've already got a lot of holes. So I think that's the smart way to play it.
I like your financial point here. Let me put it this way to people, because you said it right. If you were to move on from Dawson Knox, you'd save over $9 million, but you'd take a dead cap hit of $7 million. You're probably going to have to replace him. So the 7 still counts in your roster for him not being on it. Then what are you going to sign a guy to, 4 or 5? Why don't you just keep Dawson Knox then, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's just it adds up anyway. So you take the 7 he's counting plus whatever you sign the new guy. I mean, you're not to $17 million. I get it, right? You are saving some money, but you have a player here and you trust. So no doubt about it. The other thing that I don't think we talked much about yesterday, but I thought, I really should kind of revisit this again. It's the Keon Coleman stuff. And, you go back to when Joe Brady said the best thing that happened to Keon Coleman is me becoming his head coach. And I'm not telling you Joe Brady doesn't believe that he can get the best out of Keon Coleman. But I also think listening to him, listening to Brandon Bean after the initial stuff with Keon Coleman and Terry, it just feels like they're doing everything they can to make sure they keep his value up and make sure they keep his confidence up. I still think, if you would have asked me, I was asked today, by somebody, what's the chances he's on the roster? I said, if you would have asked me this 2 months ago, I'd say 25%. I'm more towards 50-50 now, but I'm certainly not like much higher than that at this point.
Yeah, I respect that. I'm not against them keeping this player on the roster. Mike and I talked about this some around your visit yesterday with us, Sal. And the way I put it, I think this is definitely what I think. I'm not sure exactly how I said it yesterday, but if they want him to be here, great. You just better not be counting on him. Like, you better put people in front of him that if he can perform, equally or even like beat them out, great. But you're just going to have to make it hard for him to claim, he's on the field to start like game, week 1 of the regular season, and he's playing like he was at the beginning of this year, like 80% or 70% of the snaps. You better have a better plan than that.
Agreed. And I just wonder what that looks like anyway. If he's sure, okay, in practice, could you have Keon Coleman as your number 4 wide receiver? Sure, he's on the 3rd year of a rookie deal. It's not overly expensive, and you just say, okay, well, that's fine. I just don't think that sits right. I don't think it looks right or feels right. And here's part of the reason for me is we just did this exercise last year of why is Keon Coleman, the first pick of the 2nd round, your highest drafted player that year, not getting on the field that much? Why is he the number 4 or 5 wide receiver? Why is he a healthy scratch? I don't think anybody has an interest in having that discussion again this year. Like, to me, it's got to be almost like an all or nothing. Like, he's either got to be a guy you rely on and can play, or he's just not on the team. I don't think there's any middling in anymore, because that becomes to me, that becomes a discussion. In practice, I think you could do it, right? So, yeah, they could do it. I just don't think anybody has the appetite to be sitting here answering questions after games about why Keon Coleman isn't on the field as much anymore.
Right. So, yeah, that sounds like, to me then, if you connect the two thoughts, the one I had and the one you just responded with, then they have to make it so that he beats out someone really credible. And if he does that, more power to him. That's sports, right? But I just hope that there's just got to be upgrades. I saw one clip from Brady. I don't know if this was from his news conference or a separate one-on-one. About he gets asked. He's sort of. I'm getting asked about receivers so much. I don't think the guy's performed so badly that I should be asked as often as I am, and. I mean, I don't know. I don't want any steps. I want the everything eats gear to be lit up in a bonfire. Sal, they need to find their way to, guys that can be counted on, dependable contributors. And Coleman, to me, if he can work his way back to being that, great. I just cannot have it given to him, is all.
I agree, but I do think that Brandon Beane struck the right note while still doing what I said, which is trying to keep his value up and all that. Hey, he's got to have as good like an offseason like he had last year. It's funny, that quote came out and people were like, he didn't have a really good offseason last year in training camp. He wasn't that good. Like, he was fine in training camp. But I agree with Brandon Beane. Like, I remember last year you asked me and I said everything he's doing is intentional.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's right. Like, he was last year. In the offseason last year, I thought Keon Coleman was doing everything right. And Brandon Beane said, it's like, yeah, phase 1, phase 2, like, he was doing everything right. That's the offseason. When fans hear the offseason, they might think just the preseason games. That's not what it is. It looked to me like Keon Coleman was on track. But here come the maturity issues. Here comes the tardiness. And I thought he struck the right note yesterday, which is, look, you can't let that get in the way of being productive on the field. And that's the challenge to Keon Coleman is what it is. I just don't know, Bulldog. Even if, let's just play this out. Even if Keon Coleman does everything right between now and week 1, are they still super comfortable that that's not going to happen again throughout the season? Like that, I think they just have to really, really be comfortable with that decision.
I'm talking and explaining how I feel about it. And I feel like I ran away from the key element of what you said, that the way Beane's talking, and really it was Brady with the big comment you already alluded to, right? The best thing that's ever happened to Keon Coleman is me becoming his head coach. You still think they could just drop that and walk away from it? That maybe all of this is just an exercise in trying to get a 5th instead of a 7th?
I do. I think it's very still real that this team moves on from Keon Coleman this offseason. They do not have a lot of draft picks. They have less than normal 1 through 5. I have to go look at the numbers again. I think they need to replenish that. It's a need position. You say it all the time. You're right. Why create a hole? I don't know if they think it's creating a hole. They might look at it as addition by subtraction, given everything that happened last year. And maybe they can use him to package to get something else. Hey, new scene, new environment for him, for a team that might want that. Look, is it possible he's on the team? Sure. That's why I said earlier, 50-50 for me. I could see him on the team. But I think it's absolutely still very real that they move off him this offseason.
I don't have the draft pick rundown in front of me, but I think what I remember is they don't have a 6th, but they have 2 7s.
That's right, I think.
In the draft. And I think they might have the rest of it 1 through 5, if I recall correctly. Excuse me. Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline with us here for just a couple of more minutes, live from Indianapolis, NFL Scouting Combine. So, thinking about this process, the pre-draft process and the combine where you're at, have you thought, Sal, how different this year is from, say, last year or the year they drafted Kyer Elam? I'm leaning on 2 years where they had an obvious glaring opening at corner, right? That was the case at this time last year, and it was the case a few years ago when they drafted both Elam and then, thankfully, Christian Benford in the 6th round. And Benford, of course, has turned into a fantastic player, second contract, and everything that comes with that. This year, I said a couple hours ago, I think you could convince me that edge, safety, receiver, even linebacker is the biggest glaring need this team has. Like that's 4 positions, and there might be even more. I mean, if you want to replenish the offensive line because you're fearing you might lose both McGovern and Edwards, like interior offensive line maybe gets on the list. That's a lot for a team that's in such a Super Bowl contention window, I feel like.
Yeah, it does kind of paint a picture of where the roster is compared to years past, first of all, right? We know that. This isn't the same roster. They have more holes, more positions where things haven't worked out maybe, and they have to kind of replenish that. We also know, though, that things change between now and the draft because there is free agency. So that will take care of some of this. It is different in football as it is in basketball or hockey, and I know hockey has a minor league system, but basketball is kind of the sport for this, where basketball has the draft, then they have free agency. Football has free agency, then they have the draft. So I remember 2020, receiver. Then they trade for Stephon Diggs. You're like, oh, they don't need a receiver anymore. I expect something to come out of this particular free agency to kind of, much lessen, obviously, some of these positions, at least one, if not more. And if I think now about, like, the most likely, I'd like to say wide receiver because I just think that they're banking on a rookie then, and do they really want to do that where Josh Allen is and knowing where the receiving core has been? But I'll also point to something Brandon Beane said yesterday, because you brought it up, linebacker. Brandon Beane was specifically asked yesterday, would you rather find a linebacker, or do you think it's better to find one in the draft or in free agency? Now, he's not going to commit either way. He's not going to give you his plan.
Right.
He even said there's ways to attack it. But something he did say was about being smart and being a player that can, understand what's going on in the defense. And then I talked to John Ledyard today, and Ledyard said, I think one of the things the Bills really need is someone who's going to understand very quickly what Jim Leonhard wants. That tells me free agency might be the way to attack linebacker, and then maybe you address the other position in the draft. Doesn't have to be, but I think we're going to get something from those positions that you talked about. Heck, could be safety. P.J. Locke played for Leonhard in Denver. He intercepted Josh in both playoff games, by the way, the last 2 years. Those are guys I think that might be able to. Leo Chanel, everybody's talked about. He played for Leonhard at Wisconsin. I could see those kinds of guys on that side of the ball being attacked in free agency.
Sorry, I'm sort of laughing. Everybody on Denver intercepted Josh in the playoffs this year. It's like, hello, I'm here all week. No, I mean, come on. It was a line. It was there. I just, all right, I regret it already. All right, well, are you, with what I just said in mind about the positions that you could argue are the most important, is that impacting how, you said you're not running around to a lot of these interviews, but how much does that impact how you're handling this experience, being at the combine? Like the players, are you paying more special attention to who's talking, who the Bills are talking to, or do you always, keep the same sort of attention span on that?
No, not who they're talking to, because we really don't know unless it comes out, right? Like, or people shout out, "Have you?"
Or
met with the Bills?
a player says it when he's talking to the media.
Yeah.
Right.
And honestly, Bulldog, even going back years, I kind of think, dude, they meet with 45 guys. I mean, I could ask 100 guys. I'm going to get 45. I'm going to tell you they met with the Bills, right? I mean, so what does it matter? So I don't really think about it from that perspective as much. So what they're saying, the guys at the podium, not as much. But what I find myself thinking about, because I don't know this now, is do the Bills have certain types of players, body types, things like that? And I'm watching them, these guys, and he's got length, but does that matter as much in the defense? We talked yesterday about the Javon Solomon comment, right? That was really interesting. And I'm like, years past, I'd be like, oh, dude, like, look at this guy's length. Greg Rousseau, his arm length and whatever, he gets drafted by the Bills, but I don't know, like, what types they're looking for. So I'm seeing these guys up at the podium and thinking, like, I don't know, is that what they're thinking about for the Buffalo Bills? Now, as far as, like, where they're going with pick 26, that's something that I think I'll find out more about as we go through the free agency process into the owners' meetings. I get a little bit more on that kind of thing and, like, what they're thinking about.
And what is the timing of the owner? Are you like off again and then to the owners' meetings when we talk to you again? Like what happens after that?
No, that's not going to be until the end of March. So another month from now.
No rush.
So
all right.
I'll leave here tomorrow. I'll be back on Friday. I do have something going on next week, so I won't be on for a couple of days. And then it's free agency, and I'll be all over that and talking about that and I'm with you guys and things like that. And at the very end of March is the owners' meetings. That'll be out in Phoenix. So I'll be 3 hours behind you when we talk. I'll be at noon and 1 o'clock or something joining you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, gotcha. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for fitting us in again on a busy day. Enjoy, enjoy some carpaccio or some shrimp or whatever you're going to enjoy on your last night in Indy. And
do they have shrimp carpaccio?
Shrimp carpaccio, thinly sliced, wafer thin. Slices of shrimp. Oh, I'm going to throw up in my mouth.
I would tell you what the challenge is tonight. I'm going to eat tonight. I think Josh Reed and Matt Perino are going to meet out for a bite to eat tonight. We've been over there today, and but I want to make sure though, wherever I go, I won't be able to, I think, there, but I'll be able to leave and go somewhere to watch the Sabres game. So I don't know how many people in Indianapolis tonight are going somewhere to make sure they watch the Sabres-Devils game, but I will be one of them.
I was a person who called restaurants in Houston, Texas, on the road at the Super Bowl with Mike and Paul Hamilton to find out, do you have I don't think I asked specifically for the Sabre game, but just, do you have the NHL Center Ice package? And this shouldn't surprise you. There were places I called that said, what? And place I called that said, no, we don't. And finally a place I called that said, yes, we do. Is there a game you're going to be looking for? And I said, yes. My friends and I would really like to watch the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know who the hell they were playing, the Atlanta Thrashers. I don't know. And we went to a place, and there it was. So good luck with that, I guess.
There are a few really big sports bars here, so I'm sure I'll be all right at the end of the night.
All right, Sal. Safe travels back, and we'll catch up soon.
Okay, thanks a lot.
That's our dude Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline, live from Indianapolis. His appearances are always brought to you by New York's only outlet liquor. When you need to stock up, it's the place to buy a case. What's your outlet? Take a time out and pour over some of what Sal and I talked about as it pertains to like priorities for the 2026 NFL Draft. We'll get into that as we continue. I am the Bulldog. Mike Schopp is off today. This is WGR.